This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, APCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to BTL. Back live in studio after a week at the Bassmaster Opens. It is April 4th, 2022. And we have a great lineup of guests this week, starting with none other than Big Fish, Bobby Lane. A week removed now from his dramatic, I think that's the best word to describe it, his dramatic Redcrest win on Grand Lake. And in the second half of the show, after we talk to Bobby, I know Bobby is literally on his way to the bank right now, which is a good thing after you cash a $300,000 check on Grand Lake. But we're going to talk to Bobby in the first half of the show, talk a little bit about how things went down, what led up to this win in the first part of his career. Maybe I think this might be kind of like a rebirth of Bobby Lane. Like, Bobby was always that guy who was always right there. And then you had Chris, who won 5 times in 6 years. And I thought the coolest thing was, in 2012, when Chris wins a classic and Bobby charges out on stage. And now you've got Bobby winning the Redcrest and Chris out on stage hugging him. And now they can have the photos side by side, celebrating each other's championship victories. And then the way Bobby got it done this week was just phenomenal. You had changing conditions. You had 3 main different patterns going on. And I got to be honest, Bobby took the most exciting route. Jigs, cables, and crankbaits to win the $300,000. So we're going to bring Bobby in right now and talk about Redcrest 2022 on Grand Lake. Bobby, thanks for jumping on BTL on a Monday.
Man, you got me all fired up again. I thought this whirlwind was ending a little bit, but after listening to your introduction there, Matt, it's got me living it all again, and I appreciate you doing that, and I love being on Bass Talk Live for sure.
You have been on a bunch. Was that a fair assessment, though? Do you remember when you charged out on stage behind, Chris Lane? He wins on the Red River. He had a giant one on the final day, I think, too. And it was a close deal.
He actually had a 6.11 on the final day, and on my final day, I had a 6.3. So, I do remember that just like it was yesterday. I remember hugging him so hard and him saying, my brother hugged me so hard I didn't know if I was going to be able to give a speech. And when Chris grabbed me on stage at the Redcrest just last week in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I thought I thought I was going to pass out in the boat when I won the event. But then getting a bear hug by my brother was something I wasn't quite ready for. Like, that is a big boy, and I am too now, but he can flat put the squeeze on you, man.
Yeah, that was cool. I just remembered it. Just the first time when I saw that, I was like, dude, that's the exact same thing 10 years ago, basically to the month, reverse now.
It is, and it's cool, for my dad and my parents, to know that both the brothers are champions major champions. That's the coolest thing about all of this. And I think the reason Chris was so excited this time 10 years ago, just last week, was because he lived those exact feelings I was going through. And I didn't live those feelings. I just felt joy for him. But now the role was reversed, and I can completely, know what he went through in 2012, and it's really special to have 2 brothers be major champions because, boy, I'm telling you, this is a gut-wrenching sport, man, and they're only getting better. Forward-facing sonar has come a long way, and it's harder and harder to win one of these events, and I don't care what kind of format it is, if it's a 5-fish limit weigh-in or if it's an all-you-can-catch. it is just flat out hard to be a champion any day, and especially in a stacked field like I was up against. I mean, there's some names that I would throw in there that weren't in there, but golly, I couldn't have picked a better top 10 to take the title. I mean, that is the best of the best right now.
Yeah, obviously we're run through it. Luke Clausen, Jacob Wheeler, Dustin Connell, Andy Montgomery, Zach Burge, Edwin Evers, Jordan Lee, Brian Thrift, and Michael Neal rounding them out. And I would venture to say you combine a Michael Neal and a Jacob Wheeler, and there's probably not two guys that have been hotter or more consistent over the last year and a half than those guys, but then you can't leave out Thrift or Jordan Lee. Yeah, it was absolutely stacked with the locals. you know, all week at Redcrest, I want to say you kind of lurked in the shadows. You had the local favorites that were out there. They were catching big weights. I want to get into this in the second half of the show. You had Michael Neal and Edwin that were trying to lose to each other to not finish first, not catch fish, bending their hooks in, ticked off that they're catching 5-pounders because they don't want to be in the second day of the group. And it seemed like, you were never in jeopardy of missing the cut and not moving on. But as the tournament progressed, there just wasn't, a whole bunch of buzz around you like there was a Michael Neal who kind of had his stuff dialed in after the first period, or an Edwin who was calling his shots, or a Jacob Wheeler who was like, all right, time to quit messing around and put 16 pounds and 30 minutes in the boat to move on. You were just kind of slow and consistent, but you finished 6th after the first day, 8th after the second day. You were 4th in the knockout round. And then you kind of came from behind in that final round to win it. At any point, did you lay up? Did you feel comfortable, or were you always stressing for that next bite throughout your 4 days on the water?
Well, I'll blow it through you, man. I'll give it to you, man. The first day of the event, I literally started in the back of Duck Creek, and my plan was to catch everything on the Fritz side, and it went as planned. Started in the back of Duck Creek, ran to Drowning Creek, ran to Woodard Hollow, ran to Honey Creek, and then ended up going north to Wolf Creek. I mean, on a windy day like it was that first day and cold, I wanted to see where the fish were, and practice was good. And I never let my foot off the gas the first day. Like, you can't in an event like this, man. You never know what's going to happen and what guy's going to come from behind, and you never feel safe. So the first day I was very content. I think I had 8 fish for like 26 pounds and change, and found myself in 6th place and felt really good about it. Said, okay, now all I need to do is go out there, catch a few fish, and then maybe I can get some practice in. Like, with changing conditions, huge rainstorm, the day off we had, that water didn't really soak into Grand Lake, which I never knew that part of Grand Lake, to be honest. For it to take 2 or 3 days for all that water to make everything rise, was crazy. I could not believe it came up that much, but it did. And I really wanted to practice, the knockout, or the second day of my competition, caught a couple on the Fritz side in the first period, and they pulled my camera guy, which means usually you're in, they want to go chase the cut line. I just kind of piddled around, caught 2 more during the day, had 4 for 9 pounds, knew I was in the knockout round. What's crazy, though, is I really wanted Friday off. Like, I did not know what position you had to be in to get Friday off. All these other guys did. I missed the memo somewhere, and it was actually printed for me. I just didn't get it or read it, or maybe I was too juked up to get out there and chunk that crankbait around. But I missed the memo. In the last 10 minutes on Thursday's round, my second round of competition, I caught one that weighed 2 pounds and something ounces, and it actually moved me from 10th to 8th place. And I did not have a clue that 10th place was going to fish on Friday, and that 8th place got Friday off. And I really wanted a day off. My family was in town. I hadn't got to see them all week. And that was pretty cool the way that ended up. So I got Friday off, and then I was ready for the knockout round. Honestly, I spooled up three Abu Garcia rod and reels with 12-pound, 100% Berkeley fluorocarbon. I put one black and chartreuse on, the other 2 were HD brown, and I was ready to go for the knockout round. And it started out pretty good for me. I was on the score tracker early. kind of milled around, ran into Horse Creek, foot on the gas the whole time. I'm not slowing down. Caught a 4-pounder and a big 3-pounder in Horse Creek. Had another one chase it right to the boat. And then ran into Drowning Creek at the end of the second period and popped a 3.5-pounder, popped a 312 at the end of the second. The third period started, and like almost back-to-back casts, caught like a 2.9 and a 3.7. I've watched it 100 times, Matt. That's why I know all the fish amounts. But I really love remembering all the fish catches. And at that time, I took the lead with 27 pounds, something and change in the knockout round. And I kind of slowed down then. Like, I knew I had a great shot at making the championship round. So I was going to practice. And as I'm practicing, we're getting in later in the third period. And out of nowhere, here comes Jacob Wheeler. And he is coming, and he is coming. And I go from first to second to third to fourth, and now Mark Davis is on the bubble, which I got a 6-pound cushion on. Now Jacob Wheeler's in the cut. How many more is he going to catch to knock me to fifth? Because only 5 advance into the championship round, and Mark Davis could catch a big one or 2 3-pounders, and now he's knocking me down to sixth place. It was really gut wrenching. Like, I wanted to save or go practice, and Jacob Wheeler kept me from doing that. He put on a clinic there in that third round and knocked Mark Davis out and advanced into the championship. And even Dustin Connell said the same thing on the way back in the limo ride, that, you know, he was a little disappointed at Wheeler because he had to go back to his best stuff to catch 2 or 3 fish, 8 or 9 pounds worth of fish, just to solidify himself in the championship, when we all thought we were in going into the last hour. That was the most gut wrenching day during the first 3 days of fishing, for sure. And then of course we'll get into the championship round, but you know, it was a little shaken up there at the end, for sure, in that knockout round.
It sounds like it was vintage Grand Lake. Like, I mean, you didn't have a magic spot. We saw where Edwin did, where, you know, he got on a deal. I mean, he said it. He said, hey, there was tournaments here. This is kind of a release fish area. It was a very strategic move. We saw what Michael Neal did down lake with the joint a jerk minnow on the swimmer head, and it was, you know, he could kind of go around and catch him. But like, you kind of fished vintage, old school, pre-A-rig Grand Lake stuff. You've been there a few times before, a lot of times before, but I mean, it was a vintage, late winter, early pre-spawn transition time of the year Grand Lake Derby for you.
It was, and that's the way I like to fish, man. I mean, I really do. I know forward-facing sonar's come a long way, but I mean, we're on Grand Lake. Those fish love to live shallow. The days were already getting longer. We were into spring. You started to see the dogwoods blooming. You started to see some little buddies on the trees. I mean, the water was coming up 3 foot. Grand Lake has always been known for Jason Christie throwing a single blade. You know, Edwin Evers catching them in the Elk River, flipping a jig. I mean, it's always been known to me like that. And I know we watched Cliff Pace win that one year on a jig, but it's always
brutally
been
cold
set up that
year.
style that they love to always be shallow. And it wasn't like, and I was worried about the Michael Neals, and I was worried about Edwin Evers. I heard stories about them quitting and rolling hooks and stuff like that. And you've got to, the competition in any bass tournament right now is so fierce, it's unbelievable. Like, you can't let anything get in your head at that moment. But I kept in my mind that the first wave of big fish, not to spawn, but to get in the pre-spawn mode, are always the big ones first. And that's what I tried to keep my eye on all week, is like, where are the biggest ones? So now I don't need to catch 3 2-pounders. I can catch one that weighs 4 to 5 pounds and make up for a guy that needs to catch 2 2-pounders. So I kind of stayed around that kind of fishing all week. The more power fishing, the more, you know, keeping the fish honest and stuff like that. And that's the way I love to fish. I mean, cranking in a jig is the way I fish Grand Lake every single time I've been there. And, you know, this time it's set up absolutely perfect for those two scenarios to clash.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you kind of a technique question that I've always kind of wondered in my mind, and get your answer on it. And then we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about cables and decisions to throw a jig. But obviously, you put that Fritz side to work to get to the championship round, to start out the championship round as well. Now, especially with forward-facing sonar, we're learning how the fish react to jerk baits, how the fish track and react to swim baits. In my mind, I can picture when you're flipping a lay down or a brush pile, or even flipping a dock, where those fish are positioned. The one thing that I have trouble in my mind is figuring, and I fished rock transitions a lot, Bobby, with Grand Lake and no grasses. How are those fish? Where exactly are they positioned when you're throwing that crankbait up shallow? Your boat's always sometimes sitting 12 to 15 foot, sometimes 6 foot. You're banging it in the rock transition. Are those fish literally sitting belly on the bottom? Are they facing the bank? Are they moving on a highway back and forth? Like, in your mind, when one loads up on a crankbait, what are you picturing that fish doing before it eats it?
Great question. And yeah, over the years, I have, Hartwell was a heartbreaker for me. I caught a lot cranking there one day. The two classics there, or three or whatever we fished there, I think 3 of them, I've caught a lot of them cranking. And the way that I picture it in my mind is where I was fishing when my Lowrance would drop from the rocks being in maybe 3 foot, and I started to get that depth to go down to 4, 5, 6, 7. And what I would do is to kind of troll and motor through it, and it would be a 30-yard stretch in the back of a creek that had a transition in it. It was easy to see on my C map, and it really made it easier for me to find these spots. But I picture these fish not on the rocks like most people would think. Like, I don't want that Fritz side digging down in the rocks. What happens is those fish are there for their whole winter life. Like, they live on that exact set of rocks their whole life. It's deep enough. It doesn't freeze over. The bait migrates in and out of those pockets depending on how the wind comes, and they just wait there and they suspend. They use the rocks to kind of, get around when the sun gets really high. They can get, under the rock or next to it to have the shade where it's not hurting them at all. But I picture them suspending. Like, I want my Fritz side really not to hit a rock for the most part during the first 3 days before the water got really up. Then it started to be where it was more rock oriented. It's like they went to the next level. But if you can take a picture of it, picture some bait kind of being in 7, 8 foot of water, sitting in a 3 foot water column, and the bass being right there in that bait ball. And that Fritz side comes through, and it's the time of the year that the brown crawl was the perfect color for that. And they smack it while you're reeling, hauling water, if that makes sense, which means reeling clean. You're not bumping that thing like you would think a big summertime deal, bumping a dredger on rocks and 20 foot of water. I want that real tight wobbled Fritz side to come through the strike zone in that little bit of deeper water column. I couldn't hit the bottom in 8, 9 foot of water. I think the fish were suspending anywhere from 3 to 6 foot of water, and that Fritz side and the rod and the reel to set up the line could get me any depth for that. And every time I would fish those areas, I could make different casts and catch different fish. It's like one time you'd go through and it'd be 5 foot off the bank. The next time you'd be 10 foot off the bank, and they would hit it in like open, clean water. So I think they were just out there suspending. Early in the morning, they would be a little bit deeper. The later the day got, they would suspend up as the sun got higher, and you could catch them a little closer to the bank. Although I really never wanted the Fritz side to hit the rocks. It was crazy. But that's the way I picture a pre-spawn winter, spring, early spring bite, man, is they just sit there and suspend and wait for something to swim by.
So that's real interesting because you're throwing a crawfish pattern bait, and a lot of people do that. Red in the spring, orange, red, crawfish patterns, but you believe those fish were keyed on bait fish, which are not. I think they were probably
keyed on bait fish, but it's weird. The time of the year, you don't have to have something that looks like the bait fish. A brown crawl or red crawl, anything like that. Why is red so good in the springtime? I think it's because of the crawfish, but realistically, it's just what the fish want at that time of the year. They can be sitting over a ball of shad and you can reel a fritz side right through there and they smack it. They just know. I still don't know. I'm not a huge crankbaiter. Okay. I mean, I've had one of my biggest wins on crankbait, but I'm learning more and more, the more cold water tournaments I fish, that, red is key. And I'm like, well, I'm seeing shad everywhere. Why am I throwing red? At Darbone this year, I caught them on chartreuse and black, and the shad looked just like a normal shad would, So I think you got to kind of match the water. The water in Drowning Creek was kind of clear. And I probably could have thrown a stun of jerkbait down those walls also. And I thought about doing that, but I didn't want to get caught up in too many patterns. I wanted to cover water, but I think they'll be on bait, but it's also fish. And I might have misled anybody listening. I might have misled you guys a little bit. I think the fish start to move back there just because it's the last deepest. And I heard Dustin Connell say this on live on his jerkbait. He caught a couple in the deepest part of the pocket before it went to the flat. And I'm so glad he didn't go to that flat, because all the fish he were catching, that's probably where they were migrating, was towards that flat. But those fish migrate towards the back of that deep water. And I think what happens with all the wind and the springtime and the wintertime, it just blows bait fish back there. And that's the water that warms up the first. So it gets the crawfish moving, it gets the bait fish coming. But I don't want to mislead you thinking there was big balls of shad that I was reeling a brown fritz side through. I think it's a combination of both. The fish are back there because the bait's there, and the colors, the red, the brown, that's what keys those fish on this time of the year to really go after a reaction strike.
It's a combination of favorable conditions.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a combination of everything. That's where those big fish start to move early in the year. Why are they back there? Number one, they're kind of thinking, okay, the days are longer, it's getting a little warmer, I'm going to move back here to spawn, but I'm going to hang out here and eat a little bit before. Well, they don't always need to eat just tons of crawfish. I mean, shad can swim by, brim can swim by, crawfish, all of that comes into play, and that they just set up back there because it warms up the most. But yet when the wind blows, it pushes crawfish to them, bait fish to them, brim, and anything. And it's more color oriented early in the spring like that, I think, than chasing bait balls for me.
It's kind of funny because we always try to put this in terms like these fish have like conscious thoughts. Like they're like, oh, it's like mid-March, late March. Like this is where I need to be. This is what's going to happen. But like in reality, these fish aren't like making decisions based on like where they think or where they need to be or that. I mean, they're just, I don't know. They're just ending up, you know what I mean? Like we're trying to you can sit here and try to rationalize all this stuff, but they go where they're comfort and opportunistic. It's not like this conscious, we try to make them think like they think like humans, in my opinion, but they don't. Right. They just end up there because it's where they go. Like that's just what they do.
Yeah, and Grand Lake a heck of a lot better than me, Matt, and I know,
and I've won a heck of a lot less money on it than you.
And Drowning and Duck Creek and all of them. So, you grew up there, man. I mean, I've talked to you several times about how you were so excited about fishing all the other tournaments on Grand Lake. So, you know what I'm talking about. When those fish start those longer days and those bigger females start to get back in the backs of the creeks on the last little drop of the rock, the last deepest part of those rocky banks, it makes it for some of the best cranking you have ever seen.
Good stuff. I did grow up in Central Illinois, not on Grand, and I wouldn't even put myself in the top 500 of guys on Grand Lake. The amount of
shows you what I know then.
Local talent, but I have been there for like 15 years. But the amount of local talent on Grand is absolutely insane with as much money as you can win. But can you stick around for another segment? I'm going to run a couple ads. I want to come back. I want to go blow by blow, because if you are in the Ozark region, I don't care whether it's a club tournament, a Toyota Series, a BFL, a Bassmaster Open, an Elite Series, Redcrest, anything, you've probably made a cast behind a cable, and before you even set the hook knew, it might have been a mistake right there. But now you've got the bite and you've got to set the hook. And you had all the marbles on the line. I want to talk about that when we come back. So you good for another segment, Bobby?
Hey, if you're asking, I'm here to answer.
All right, it's BTL on a Monday. We'll be back after this.
Bigger and better. The Lowrance Ultimate Fishing System upgrade now offers more. A new $200 rebate on active target live sonar and bigger savings with up to $1,200 cash back. Pick fish finding tools to fit the way you fish. From high-performance sonar and ultra-quiet ghost trolling motor to navigation and networking tools that bring it all together. Find more, see more, catch more.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
I've been my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us. Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
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 Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
We are back on a Monday. BTL. That Open was pushed back a day because of the weather. And then I had to drive all day after a 5:30 check-in on Friday where I spent the last 6 hours of my day trying to catch my fifth keeper. We'll get into that later. Also wanted to mention, Bobby, got a lot of great people that support the show and BTL, and that is a new partnership with the Deep Dive app. And I know there's a lot of apps out there, fishing apps, everything. You know as well as I do. There's only one thing that you really can help you become a better angler, and that's time on the water. Would you agree? Doesn't matter. Apps, bait, lures, rod, reels. And I've been a big proponent of that, and I've been approached by a number of different apps and stuff, and I'm like, don't really want to get into that. Not my thing with BTL. But this is Johnny Schultz, and I've known Johnny since he was like 9 years old. I don't want to use the word savant, but he's kind of like, he's very analytical and in-depth. Anyways, like, hey, I want you to check out this app. I'm like, dude, don't really do apps on BTL. But then I checked it out, and it's legit. It's good stuff. I'm not going to say you could take the app and go, straight up catch fish with it, but I think there's some merit to it. So did a partnership with him. Let our listeners know we're going to have him on in the next couple weeks to dive into that, to talk about how you get a boat sponsorship when you're 9 years old. I met him in the Casting Kid days. We were both Casting Kids champs. So anyway, we're not Redcrest champs. Bobby Lane is a Redcrest champ. And part of the reason you are a Redcrest champ, does that ever get tired hearing that? How many times have you watched it? How many times? Okay, so we got to set the scene, Bobby. You catch those fish at the end. How many times have you watched the 6-pounder on a jig? Don't lie.
I know almost the exact times and the exact time I caught every fish on that final day. I have watched it every single night since I have been home, if I've had time, which barely have time to do anything right now, but it was weird the other night. I walked downstairs and my wife says, "Oh, the champ is here. You know, this was just 2 nights ago." And I said, "Yeah, I just watched it again." And when I went downstairs, my wife and my son and my daughter were watching it also downstairs on the kitchen table. So I'm going to say I've watched it at least every single day since I have won the Redcrest. So at least 10 to 15 times. And my dad said I've had so many people tell me they rewatched it 20, 30, 40 times a day. Just the way that it all shook up and went down, man. I mean, it's hard not to watch, Matt. I mean, really, I get into it and I'm like, I've already seen this. And when I get back into it, I get right to where I caught him again. And it's so cool. Just the way that it went down and to kind of see the way that I went through my day and to keep the positive attitude that I had. I mean, you know, I relive it when I watch it because I really don't know what I'm going through there out on the water half the time. I'm just in the fishing zone, like, you know, and then to kind of relive it and see the things I say and learn, you know, and normally you learn from mistakes. On this one here, I finally don't have to learn. I learned how to actually overcome all the mistakes that have happened in the past.
That's awesome. Best decision you've made on the water to transition to that jig? You had 2 options. You start running new water, you change baits, the crankbait bite's dying, or you say, I'm Big Fish Bobby Lane and the Fritz side got me here and I'm going to live or die with the Fritz side. Those were really your 2 options.
Yeah, and those were my 2 options. I mean, and I lived and died by, you know, I lived by the Fritz side all week long. There's no dying in this story at all. But that's
what I'm saying. But you could have died by it too, but you didn't.
Oh yeah, what was weird is, and I think maybe being, you know, in this long enough and been in around some tournaments, I really never knew when guys say, oh, they've made the move to the bank. You know, I mean, I've seen it in sight fishing tournaments like on Santee and in Florida, where they've gone from 3 foot all the way up to 1 foot overnight. But I've never really got to live in that moment where they make that transition within an hour or 2. And the way that went down was so cool. I was coming around some of my best stuff with the Fritz side 5. And it was like little ones were slapping at it, or the bass, it still could have been good ones that were there, were like, the water's kind of gotten warm enough. We're gonna still slap at it, but we're not gonna eat it real good. I had several pull off, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, something is going on, and I have got to figure this out. And that's the way I approached my whole entire day. And it was really, Matt, 100% instinct. There was a little pocket that I eyed down in my knockout round back there in Drowning Creek, and it was a cool looking pocket, man. It had a little horseshoe in it, and it had some laydowns and stuff like that. And I never ventured back there. All I did was visualize it. I would fish across the creek on trolling motor back over to my good stuff. And every time I troll a motor, I'd say, golly, if they ever got shallow, like that would be a place I would go. Like, this is a cool tucked in pocket. I don't think there's any water back there, but man, if the water comes up anymore, I would love to go back there and throw a spinnerbait or something like that. And as I fall down to 8th place and 9th place or whatever I was in the second period, towards the end, I went down my best stretch of cranking again, and I had 2 or 3 just absolutely slackline it and not even get a hook. And at that time, I said, you know what, something's got to change. And I ventured into where that pocket was, and I caught a 114 cranking in a little dip back there, and my boat was in about 1.5 feet, and it dropped into 2.5 foot of water. And in front of me was an old willow tree, and I pitched the jig up to the willow tree, didn't have any success. I picked the crankbait up. I kind of cranked through the middle of that horseshoe, and on my way out of that horseshoe, now this horseshoe's only 20 yards long. Like, it's not very big. It has maybe 5 trees in the middle of the island, and it's just big enough for kind of one boat to go through. Mm-hmm. And when I went through the middle of it, it came up to like 1/2 foot. Then my boat fell off into the other side, and it went to like 2 foot of water. And on the very end of that horseshoe, there was a laydown. And I noticed my boat was in 2.5 foot of water now. And I'm like, golly, if there was ever a spot for a fish to move up, to come swimming down from the stuff I had been cranking, only 200 yards. This would be the first place a bass should be. I flipped the jig in there, immediately got a bite. 2 flips later, I lose a 315. I went to the next dock that was super shallow. It had a boat ramp behind it, and I caught like a 210 behind it, or a 2.9. And man, that's when things started to click. Like, that's when I'm like, all right, the transition is going on. Where can I go that I haven't been to try to catch some fish shallow? And that was kind of a clueless thing to me. Like, now all these thoughts are going through my head.
So talk about the 6 then. Because that was off
So
of
I
a
make
dock.
to talk about the 6. So I'm still in Drowning Creek, and
Right.
what I do is I run up in Drowning Creek a little further, and there was one dock that I wanted to hit that had some brush behind it.
Okay, so there was brush. That was my question, was because I mean that was kind of one of your main only like pure dock fish.
Well, there was a dock that had a bunch of brush behind it.
Okay.
I fished it in a past Bassmaster Classic, and I caught 2 behind this dock. In the tournament. And in practice, I went back there and I pitched my jig in a piece of brush. It was the only jig bite I had all week long, and it was about a 3.5 pounder, and it ended up pulling off, which I was fine with. And I was on my way to that dock, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go to the back. For some reason, I just kept idling to the back of the pocket before I got to the dock, and I still to this reason don't know really why. And now that I'm thinking of it, that me and you were talking, there was a stretch of docks back there years ago that I caught like a 2 and a 3 on. And I think I was cranking those docks. It was a little channel swing back there. So I said, you know what? I got nothing to lose. Let's go do that. And I went all through back there, and I didn't have anything. And I said, you know what? I'll just fish my way up to that dock. There's so many, there's got to be fish in here somewhere. And it's weird, Matt. I told you earlier, but I actually on Google Earth last night was looking at that pocket. The log is completely submerged out of the water on Google Earth. And as I'm coming up the bank now, the water has rose 3 feet. This log is right in front of my boat. I pitched to the front of it, nothing. And I pitched to the middle of it. And the minute the jig hit the log, the line jumped about 4 feet, and I caught a 3-pound, 10-ounce bass. And I'm like, golly, okay. So now I'm in like 7th place. I moved up a spot because everybody else is catching a couple. And the next thing in front of me is a super shallow dock. And what do I got to lose? You're 100% right. I skipped to the back of the dock, nothing. I skipped to the middle of it. Now, this thing's only sinking like, the minute it hits, it sinks like 4 or 5 inches. And I'm like, golly. And I pitched to what everybody knows as Grand Lake, those big black floaters that hold the dock walkway up. And I pitched to the back of that walkway, and it sunk about 1.5 feet. And they came to me live, and I hopped the jig once, I hopped it twice, and it loaded up. And when I set the hook, it was so shallow that fish immediately came out of the water, and I saw how big she was. And I was like, oh my Lord, like, are you kidding me? I cannot believe that I've hung a fish this big in this shallow of water on championship day. Now, what are my options here? I can get out of the boat, I think, and take a penalty to try to land the fish on the dock, but I didn't know at this time, I didn't care about that decision because I didn't know if it was legal or not. All I knew is I wanted to get this fish in. It was meant to be, Matt, because what happened is there was a dock cable. Those dock cables were about 2 foot apart. One went towards the bank and one went towards the back of my boat. The fish swam under my boat somehow, and I was able to keep my Fantasista X rod over the first cable so it didn't touch it. I got to grab my line under the second cable, so now I'm basically hand lining a 6'3", hoping that it doesn't jump or wrap or make any quick decisions, because if my line touches these cables, man, it's gone. Like, they are super rusted. It's not one of the new cables. And lo and behold, it swam back under the dock. It swam back towards me. I was able to keep my 15-pound, 100% Berkeley fluorocarbon. I mean, kudos
15
to that line. It did its job.
15.
And I got to lift that fish, and now the momentum is starting to pick up a little bit. Now I know where I want to go. Now I know what I need to do. And, you know, that was a game changer. I mean, 99% of the time that fish comes off. There's no doubt about it.
I think for 99% of the people it comes off, but like, listen, I've been there. I've done that in Nichols tournaments for boats. I've done it in the Costa, and I'm not saying everyone has. And your natural reaction on a fish that big when it starts coming towards you, you want to pull and get it away. Like that was such a veteran move with all the marbles on the line not to pull on that. I don't think people realize how hard that is. I'm thinking of 3 times right now where I've broken off fish that were jumping. I'm like, oh, it's a cable deal.
Yeah,
but like to understand the physics and what you had to do and what was on the line with that in that time crunch. I mean, that's like a, was it the Joe Montana to Jerry Rice pass in the Super Bowl or one of those moments where you're like, holy cow, there was 99 ways that could have gone wrong and only one way it could have gone right, and you did the right thing. And no one would have blamed you for if it'd gone wrong.
Yeah, I mean that was I needed every single ounce. Like if I don't catch one of those fish towards the end, I don't win this. We're not talking today. We're talking about another, you know, maybe a good tournament, maybe who knows where, you know, I mean, but yeah, I think that was like the golfer making the putt on 18th green from 32 foot away that swings 3 foot left to right and he drains it. That's the Hail Mary at the end of the Super Bowl. That's the shot from the, you know, the basketball court from midfield with a second to go on the clock and the guy drains it. I mean, that's what that felt like to me. And you're right. I think it was a veteran move. I've hooked fish before early in events like that. If it's earlier in the tournament, you're right. I probably would have tried to horse that fish over that cable, broke my line and been so disappointed. And who knows what the tournament would have had then, but to have it with all the pressure on the line, to stay calm and cool and know that I had to keep my rod and reel over that back cable so my line could not touch it. I knew I drilled the hook in that fish. Like when I hit it, you could almost see me lean forward. That's how big it was. And I knew that hook was buried. So now it's a matter of let's manage this situation the best we can to try to get this beast in. And you're right. 1% comes in, 99, it happens. So, I mean, you know, from there you see me idle out, or I actually go to the next dock, catch a short, but then I idle out and I am focused and driven on going back to that horseshoe and fishing the shallow docks and anything that gets in my way at that moment. With an hour and 15 left is when I hit the mouth of the creek that I had caught the 6-pounder in to go towards the back of Drowning Creek more. I actually went back to that tree, lost another one. They don't show it on camera, but I went back in that horseshoe. There was an old culvert that came out, and where that culvert came out, there was about a 2.5 foot drop. I caught a good like 213 in there. In the very back of that, there was a willow tree that I actually looked at on Google, and it's way out of the water. In my dust trail, I set the hook, and it's like a 2.5. And then we go to the ending where I pitch into another tree, catch a 2-1, and then I'll relive this moment forever. I'm actually getting a scale with a fish on the scale, a regular just stuffed fish, not a mounted fish, that's going to say 2 even. How that fish goes to 2 pounds on the third reweigh, it was meant to be.
I mean, really, those last 3 fish at 322, 348, and 357 with the final cast at 4, you had a 2-3, a 2-1, and a 2 even. Like any of those, it was cool, dude. I'll be honest. It was the first time that I was like, okay, I get this format, I get this game, because the big fish mattered. It wasn't 100 fish slugfest. The big fish mattered on the final day, and you knew where you stood. It was the first time in my mind that I had been like, all right, two completely separate games, and And I'll be honest, I thought the Classic with Jason Christie and the way that went down could not have played out any better. And everyone was going to compare Redcrest to the Classic, and the way that Redcrest played out to highlight the rules and that tense moment and the excitement, the way it played out, both of them were a 10 out of 10. And both of them highlighted the best parts of bass fishing and the natural guttural reaction that came from it. I mean, I'd have never thought 5 years ago in my day that a 2-pounder on Grand would have had everybody yelling and screaming and hollering and made that much difference to you. And you're like, dude, okay, I get it. That's freaking cool.
You know what? And I appreciate you saying that it was a 10 out of 10 for both sides, the Classic and the Redcrest. And I agree with you 100%, man. I mean, this was our big shot. You know, we've had a couple of Redcrests before, and congrats to Edwin and Dustin. I mean, they did a phenomenal job on live catching those fish, but they're really, for those guys, there wasn't that huge celebration that I got to witness. There wasn't the limo ride back from Grand Lake and feel like I'm a rock star coming out of the limo in front of the paparazzi with 50 cameras in my face. I mean, to walk out on the post-game show without a weigh-in, you know what I mean? We don't have fish to bring in, and to see thousands of people there and sponsors standing there celebrating. I mean, it was awesome. It was what we needed. It was super cool. And I've heard exactly what you said, Matt. We are getting to see both sides of the fishing world. The more traditional 5-fish weigh-in, which there is nothing wrong with. I love fishing the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit. I still love that part of the fishing game. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. But we've also thrown in the all-you-can-catch minimum weight size. On Grand Lake, it was a 2-pounder. And you're right, who thought a 2-pounder would make the difference and make everybody go crazy? I love the fact that, you know, we at the very end knew who the champion was. And you still get that little delay. And that's why I said I hope that stands dog. Because I still at that moment did not know for sure that I had won the Redcrest. And then the cameraman said, Bobby, it's official. And, you know, that's when I had a flat come apart almost. Didn't know if I was going to pass out, throw up. I mean, this is something I've done this for 18 years now, I think. And I've been in big moments and I've seen it all. I've congratulated so many champions and been there for them and blah, blah, blah. But to actually overcome all of that and to do it in style the way that it ended up was super, super cool, man. So thank you for saying that. You're right. Redcrest was the whole week, the gifting suite, the dinners, the whole way that it was presented, the takeoffs, you know, they had to keep people off the docks. I mean, you know, we needed that. We really did, and they delivered. And Tulsa and Grand Lake of the Cherokees couldn't have done it in a bigger and better way, man. It was awesome, and I am so honored and humbled to be your Redcrest 2022 champion. I just love that statement. I love that phrase, and it's an honor.
A couple more things, then we'll let you go. Like I said, I know you've got to get to the bank, take care of some business before you head to Heavy Hitters in Texas, right?
Yes, leaving this afternoon. They head to Heavy Hitters out in Texas. We then immediately go to Lake Pickwick for a pro circuit. Then we will head straight back to Osage Beach on Lake of the Ozarks. And then we will go straight to Lake Gunnersville to finish up the 4th pro circuit. And then before I catch just a little bit of a break in May, which is well needed, I promise. My house looks like it's been abandoned, but it's because, you know, Dad hadn't been home to keep things clean around there for sure. The inside's gorgeous, but the outside needs some loving, and I'm looking forward to that in May for sure.
It's a cool house, folks. Like when I went, who did Andy Bean is who we shot that with a couple 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
I thought Bean, I was inventing a new sport.
Titles. He shot that with us. We did the golf out there at Grasslands, man.
What did we call it? What did I call that?
That was
I had some something like. No, I think that was an event. I don't know.
No, it wasn't Bass and Birdies.
You cast a golf ball with the fish. I thought I was going to turn it into the latest and greatest newer sport, and then Bobby was like, "Hey, I've got a PGA Tour winner who's top 5 majors. I could fish with the golf ball against him. And it turned out great. And then it was one of just those things where I got time and busy, and I would like to revisit that. I need to go back and see if I still have that. I could repost that with the Redcrest champ. Now that would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
because I thought there was some.
I think we actually hit some golf balls and we putted with the butt of our rods or something like that, man. It was an awesome deal, and Andy loved it.
Yeah. Where's I going with that? Anyway. Oh no, you talked about your house. You are the only professional angler whose house I've been in that you literally, no joke, can fish while sitting on your living room couch.
Yes, you can sit in the passenger seat of my Phoenix in the garage and flip off the dock. My son just sent me 7 pictures while I've been on the phone with you. He went out off the dock this morning and caught a 6-pounder and an 8-pounder on a spin rocket. So he's ate up with fishing too. But you're right. You could in the most miserable day of the year, you could literally open the back door and pitch out off the dock. And I got enough brush out there that the fish have no choice but to live in it. And unfortunately, my son's getting older and his buddies come over. So when I get home, they're half sore mouthed. But they're still, it's a pretty cool house, man. I love being there.
Is it weird looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing pictures of yourself wearing green?
Yes, it is. My wife had a big party for me the other day. Everybody in Lakeland at Beef O'Brady's here. She rented out the whole room. And when I walked in, man, I mean, the place was just absolutely packed. It's people I haven't seen in a long time. Sorry, I had low battery on there, but we got time. It was only on the 20%, not the 10%.
Okay.
But
okay. That's good.
It's not, it's, you know, we have a lot of pictures of stuff that I've won and stuff like that, but to win a major like this, I mean, the World Championship was great, but that was more for television, not for live and for people to watch until after the show was aired. But it hasn't gotten old, I promise. It's a feat that I've wanted for a long time. Like I said, I'm 48 years old this month, so last month actually. Now we're in April. My daughter turned 18 April 1st, so. You know, I'm not getting any younger, Matt, and to win one of these has gotten harder and harder. And I want to make the most of this, and I want to enjoy every single moment of it. But somebody asked me that yesterday. They said, you get tired of seeing yourself on TV and stuff like that. And sometimes I do. I really do. I love going to like headwaters with my son without a camera and without a GoPro, without anything, and just being Bobby again and just fishing with him or fishing with my dad on. He moved on just a private lake here and going out there and relax. And I love that too. But, you know, it's the nature of the game we're in today. You know, the more exposure you can get, the better off you are, the better your sponsors appreciate you more and more. And, you know, I've learned to love the spotlight now. And it's neat to be able to sneak away and get away from it. But I realize it's a job. It's a passion of mine, and it's something that I've lived for a long, long time. And I feel like, you know, this is what it is, and I better get used to it because we got a whole year before another Redcrest, and I'll be the champ all year long. So
I'm glad you answered that way. Like that was way deeper. I said green, like the color green with the Durabraid jersey instead of black and yellow like you've been the last couple years. I said, is it weird seeing yourself green? Dude, I'm so glad you answered that question because that was deep. I was just like, it's weird seeing you wearing green and not in your typical spider wire colors.
Well, here's the crazy thing is everybody says, what is Durabraid? Durabraid is a new spider wire. It's spider wire. People don't really get that yet, but they will. I think we made a pretty good statement there at the Redcrest. But Durabraid is spider wire. It's 25% tougher, and it's just a really cool line. But, you know, real quick, I didn't have a lot of momentum going into Redcrest. I came off a really poor finish at Harris Chain. I finished almost last at Lake Fork. I had a bummer move at Smith Lake. I've kind of just I made a few checks. I mean, they talk about momentum, and I had negative momentum going into Redcrest. But, you know, once they started smacking that Fritz side, my momentum got a little more and more. And I told my son after practice, I said, Bobby Jr., I think I can win this tournament. And I had no idea it was going to shape out the way it did. But I am so glad that it happened the way it did.
That's awesome. One of the most well liked, fun loving anglers on tour that I've come across, and I mean, you can tell a lot about an angler and the relationships that he's developed on the roads over the years based on how many guys stick around. And there are certain wins where fellow competitors are like, yeah, good for him. I'm glad he won. He figured it out, and they went on with their life. But then there's certain wins where they're like, dude, I'm so jacked for that guy, and that's so awesome in the way it went down. And like everyone that I've talked, like I came off the water, I was practicing when it went down on Cherokee, so I had the thing, I was watching it while I practiced for a Bassmaster Open, and I get off the water. Brad Hallman, I was rooming with, gets off the water, and I come in, and he's like, did you see that? It was freaking awesome. I'm so happy for and I mean, he was genuinely, he's like, look, he's like, I got the hair standing up on my arms. He's like, I'm so happy for that guy. There's a lot of professional anglers. It means you've done it the right way for a long time, Bobby. And there's a lot of people that were happy to see you lift that big red trophy over your head.
Yes, it's super cool to have it sitting in the living room now. Of course, the check is also sweet also, but make sure you tell Bradley Holman I said hi. I've roomed with him in the past also. I think the world of him and his family, and you got a good guy there for sure. But yeah, that it's not. I'm getting chills on my neck right now, man. Just kind of reliving it all again. The more of these I do, it's like it brings it all back, and it hasn't gotten old, and it's not going to get old. I knew I was going to wake up the next morning, and me and my wife were just in a dream, and then we looked up and we saw the trophy sitting on the Yeti cooler there in the room, and it was super, super cool to have that moment be real again. And of course the phone and the news, and it was a whirlwind in the beginning, and the whirlwind slowed down a little bit, but man, I got to fish yesterday a little bit with my daughter's boyfriend over in Tampa. He actually lives on a freshwater canal that you lift your boat up and you're actually in Tampa Bay. It's a really cool place, but man, it was cool to be out there. It's the first time I fished since I've been home, besides just making a few casts off the dock, and we caught a lot of fish last night, and I felt like I was back in the groove. So I'm excited to get to Redcrest. A couple-day drive is definitely what I need. I'm ready to get my Abu Garcia rods and reels back in action. I re-spooled them all yesterday, and I'm looking forward to the spring. Like, this is the time of the year that I love to try to pick those shallow fish apart. So I'm hoping for, good and better things. Not, it ain't going to get no better, but I'm hoping that now we're in the spring and things are warming up, that, fishing's going to become a little bit easier than it started out early in the year for me, for sure.
Thanks, Bobby. Anything else you want to get in here before we, you got to be down to like 10% on the phone. So.
Yeah, man. No, I just thank all the fans. Thank all the anglers, all the sponsors, everybody that helped me get through this. I mean, it can't do anything without all those people. To get all the text messages and the phone calls and the comments on Instagram and Facebook, just thanks everyone, man. I'm humbled and honored to be your Redcrest champion.
You're the man. Have fun at the bank.
See you, dude.
See ya. That was Big Fish Bobby Lane, who was headed to the bank. So, dude, I've known Bobby for a long time, and like, he has not changed at all. He's super fun to hang out with, and what you get in an interview like that is what you get 100% of the time with Bobby. It's fun to watch him get ticked off. Like, he doesn't hold back on that stuff. Like that whole Lane family. Like I said, I've told the story. Case of beer next to the pool in Elite Series. Chris and Bobby with a pool skimmer trying to catch a raccoon, and they had no idea what to do when they caught it, but they caught the thing. And it was a pretty angry raccoon, but really good stuff. All right. Like I said, I know we're a week behind here with the Bassmaster Open that I had. This Redcrest took place last week, and then this week was kind of an off week for professional fishing at the highest level. The Heavy Hitters on Palestine takes place at the same time as the Elite Series on Chickamauga. Both of those should be absolute slugfest, but we did have a Toyota Series won by probably the best name and the best location in the history of professional fishing. I mean, it could not go any better. We'll talk about that. We will also talk about the Bassmaster Open that just went down on Cherokee Lake. We actually have Coop Gallant, who won that event. will be on the show tomorrow. But when I come back, I made a list after Redcrest, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about not like comparing it, but just some of the things that I noticed there, some of how I thought it went down at Redcrest. So I wanted to make sure that we did a full Redcrest show with Bobby. Bobby brought the goods today, and I greatly appreciate it. So we'll take our final break of the show and then come back with Redcrest and Bassmaster Open and Toyota Series talk, and then look ahead at the next week on BTL. It's BTL on a Monday.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. Two sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look. That matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Monday, April 4th. Just talked with Redcrest champ Bobby Lane, approaching $2 million in earnings. And we never really got into this, so we could do 2 hours with Bobby. He's got a lot of great stories, but I didn't realize how, I don't want to say little, but how few times he's won. Yeah, he's got a couple Toyotas under his belt, Opens under his belt, but that one Elite Series and the World Championship, which I don't even know where to put that World Championship in the, like, if you're judging where it goes, is that equivalent to, I don't know where to put the World Championship. I mean, they call it the World Championship, but they have, I mean, you could call it the greatest tournament in the history of Earth or do whatever you want to. But then this Redcrest thing, but it had been a while since he had won what would be a tour level, top level event. So great for Bobby. I wanted to get into a couple other anglers who did win this past week, and we will start with probably the greatest name in the history of fishing. I might try to get this kid on. But first of all, it took place at Dale Hollow, which is just a historic, cool name. Tennessee, which is important in this. Jack Daniels Williams wins 3 days out of 287 boats. The Toyotas are absolutely killing it as far as how many boats. I mean, they're capping the thing at like 300. They had one 325. Jack Daniels Williams wins Dale Hollow, Tennessee with 64.10. Big win there. And I think he won like $70,000-$80,000 for that. And then another really intriguing win that took place this past week on Cherokee Lake was Cooper Gallant. Coop Gallant is what everyone calls him. He's kind of a big up-and-coming young kid who's had a lot of success. He narrowly missed the Elite Series. Last year, he finished 5th in the Northern Opens to get to the Elite Series. That was the one where all three tied for points. I think it was like Iconelli and Alex Redwine and Jay Shakurat. Two of them were like 21, 22 at the time, and I think they all had 547 points, I want to say, which is like insanely. Anyway, he was 5th last year in the Northern Opens. Now he's in 7th in the Southerns. He's in the Elite Series conversation with them taking the top 3 after that. But first day there at Cherokee postponed because due to the high winds. And at first I was livid about this. I was ticked. I was texting people. I can't believe it. I practiced for the win. And then I actually got kind of down to the lake because I was not happy with Chris Bose's decision to cancel it till I got down to the lake and saw it and was like, okay, that's why Chris gets paid the big bucks. I think Hank was on vacation, so Chris stepped in for this Open. So even though there are some text messages out there to like Daryl Gleason and the like about what the heck, I can't believe we're canceled, it was the right call. We shouldn't have been out there when it was that windy. It wouldn't have been safe. But then the whole field fished the 2 days, and Coop had 36-1. Very interesting. I looked like a ton out there in that mid-depth, deep range, using forward-facing sonar, and I'm like, man, there's nothing out here. And he said, yeah, there's nothing out there until you drop your Demiki rig down there, and then they come up off the bottom. So first and third place. I think I want to get this right. I think there was a very strong Canadian theme to this. I think first and third were both Canadian anglers, and I think maybe second was John Canada, who his last name is Canada. I know he's in the top 10, but we'll have Coop on tomorrow to talk a little bit about that. And then on Wednesday, president of Bass, Cat, and Yarcraft, Rick Pierce, making an appearance. I saw Rick at both the Redcrest Expo. They had a Bass Cat display there, and also they did test rides at Keystone Lake, and then also at the Classic Expo. So we're going to talk to Rick Pierce about the two expos. We're going to talk to him about the boat business now. I mean, it's really hard to get a boat. Everyone wants a bass boat. We'll talk to him about the new STS hull, some stories in bass fishing, what he thought about the two. We could go for 3 hours with Rick. I was getting it set up yesterday with him on email, and he's like, hey man, your job is to keep this interview on task on Wednesday, move it along in a timely fashion because I have a meeting at 10. I said, okay, we can do that, Rick, but I could talk to Rick Pierce for 3 hours. All right, let's get into let's put a bow on Redcrest. We'll obviously talk about a little bit about it, but I made some notes after the first day. Now, full disclosure, this was my Redcrest experience. I canceled a day of practice in the Bassmaster Open just so I could go on Friday, the first day that the Redcrest Expo opened. They fished like Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway, they fished beforehand, and then the expo was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I went Friday. I went there basically when it opened. I stayed basically until it closed. I did not in person see the post game show where they bring them back and bring them on stage, the top guys and all that stuff. So I cannot speak firsthand on that. But everything else from the expo to the anglers, everything I can. First of all, big plus there, the media side of MLF. A lot of those guys came over from FLW, mainly Joe Pogger. Had him on. He's on the Bass Fishing Board Hall of Fame committee too. Known Joe a long time, and he does a heck of a job with the media as far as making sure we have what we need. I was there in kind of a weird capacity, so I was like hanging out at the Pro Guide battery booth and the Bass Tank booth. Some of my personal sponsors for the Bassmaster Opens was also there as a fan, wanting to see what was happening on Grand Lake and check out the expo to see if there's anything that I need for the tournament. And then also was there as a member of the media, kind of covering it, looking at it, analyzing what was going on. So I was wearing a lot of different hats in it, but a great job as far as how they took care of the media, explained to it, access to the anglers, interview, explaining what was going on. And then that also have a really awesome little swag pack. Got a pair of Costas in it. Gave us a pair of Costas. The expo, I was very interested to see what the expo would be like. And I have a big plus next to the expo. I don't want to say that this was like make or break, because I don't know what the inner workings are of MLF and how it works and all that. But I do know there were a lot of people there, anglers there, people in the know, that some of them use the term like, man, this is really important for us to have a good Redcrest, a good expo. And like when you walked in, and it was at the expo center there, and they had the whole top, about 3/4 of the top floor there. I'd say it's maybe a fifth of the size of the Classic Expo. And I'm kind of comparing and contrasting a little bit because they were back to back. And like I said, when you're going to compare the two, it's just human nature. And I wouldn't, but there's been some press releases where organizations compare themselves to the other organization. So yeah, we're going to compare them. It's probably about a fifth of the size, I would say. But man, super crisp, super clean, looked incredibly professional. The red, the black, the Redcrest theme, the screens where you couldn't be anywhere in the expo without seeing a screen of the live action that was going on, and the anglers that were still competing, even if they weren't competing on that day, were not allowed to be at the expo until they'd been eliminated or until all of the tournament action was over. So that way they wouldn't be able to see things on the screen or talk to people about it. But I was actually very impressed with the expo on Friday. Not heavily attended on Friday. I'd give it like a 4 or 5 out of 10 as far as attendance, but it wasn't empty. There was definitely some steady traffic in there throughout the day, but not crowded by any means on Friday. I would not use the term crowded. Saturday, I'd seen some pictures and talked to people. I talked to two BPT anglers who, one of them fished and got cut, the other was not, and they said, man, Saturday was the day to be there. I was traveling, I wasn't there. I saw some pictures. I talked to several other people. Yes, very well attended Saturday and Sunday. So, I mean, I would say that the expo was a success. People came from, I talked to multiple people from other states who came to Tulsa just for the Redcrest, that were fans of Major League Fishing, that they watch on all of the channels that Major League Fishing is on, and wanted to come meet these anglers. There was ample time. Like if there was an MLF angler that wasn't on the water, they were at Redcrest, and ample time. I saw a lot of interaction between the pros. Did not see any Elite Series pros there. I only saw 2 BPT pros at the Classic. I'm not sure how many they're actually there, but did it have a championship like feel to it? I don't think it's fair to try to compare the feel of Redcrest to the feel of the Classic yet. You know why? Because the Classic is half a century in the making, and what I think adds to the ambiance, the feel, the importance is history. You know, the Neil and Reel and Paul Elias, the 82 Classic, the Kirchhoff in 94, the Denny Brower in 98. We talked about Chris Lane in 2012, the Never Give Up Ike in his Classic, the KVD Grinder with Aaron's second place at the time there in Pittsburgh in 2000. Like, they just don't have the history behind it to build it up to that importance. So it had a feel of a big event. It did not have a feel of the Classic, and I like I said, I don't think it would be right to try to compare that feel. They did a really good job trying to build the excitement and generate the excitement for that. But overall, I think I honestly think it was a success. And if I didn't think it was, just like if I had thought the Classic was a Classic and it was fine. But man, I think we had two at a time when both organizations needed it. Both organizations have momentum and needed momentum. I think we had a really good Classic, and the ending couldn't have been any better and highlighted what is great about the 5-fish format. And I think we had a really good Redcrest that really highlighted what is good about MLF and the players that are on the BPT, and what is good about that format over on the BPT and MLF side. And I didn't hear a lot of, at the Classic, I heard maybe one or two people be like, oh, there's not many BPT guys here, or where are the BPT guys, or where's Kevin, or stuff like that. But as a whole, no, I didn't hear any of that talk like we did at the first Classic. And then likewise at the Redcrest, I didn't hear any talk about how it wasn't the Classic. They're now two separate standalone events. I think they're both very, very successful in their own way. Much, much bigger. The Classic, just the whole stage, the arena, the weigh-in is much bigger. But I think it's also clear MLF is not based around the fans. I think it's nice to see those fans there once a year to do it, bring it out. And they were also put in a weird position because of timing. This was 2-3 years in the making. And they had two big boat shows in Tulsa prior to this in the winter. One of them was in that building. I have like a boat and outdoor expo show. And then the other one was at a different location, but, massive if you want to go see boats, some tackle, not really a lot. But then they also just had the Classic. You had a lot of people who went to the Classic. And then you had Redcrest. And then 2 days after Redcrest, you had the World's Fishing Fair for the 50th anniversary of Bass Pro Shops, which really kind of stuck Redcrest right in the middle of this, and then throw in $4 a gallon on gas. And I think you had some people that made a decision. I'm not talking about sponsors. I'm talking maybe fans, maybe people that are in the industry, maybe some media people that made the decision like, hey, we can't go to all of these things. And since Redcrest was kind of in the middle, kind of a question mark since they'd never done it before with the fans, with the show, the attendance, I think maybe that one got kind of left out of the mix for some people, especially, hey, we did the Classic, we're going to do the World's Fishing Fair and Redcrest. But I was happy with that. Had a great time. The issues that arose for me, like I said, this is me personally talking. There is a glaring issue, and I think that people are aware of it because they changed it for the regular season events. I got to see how I want to word this. I think there's a glaring issue. It bothered me that a day and a half into their championship event on a lake that I fished, that I wanted to see how they were fishing it, how they were attacking it, where every bite should be the most important bite of that angler's career up until that date, up until the next fish, which should be the next important bite there. And I blame zero on the anglers. This is a format. What was happening, I would have done the exact same thing in that situation. But it's weird that you're a day and 3 hours into this big Redcrest, and you have guys that are rolling their hooks, and you have Edwin who's like, man, I got to be careful. I don't know if I want to weigh this one, if I'll take the lead. You've got Michael Neal, who hasn't fished, who throws back keepers without weighing it. Like, that to me is a major issue. And you can say, oh, well, that's the strategy of it, and that's it. It's a fishing tournament. Your goal is to win the fishing tournament, and I don't like a fishing tournament where the leaders are trying to not catch fish. Like, literally, they were having a competition between Michael Neal and Edwin Evers. And like I said, I would have been doing the exact same thing if I was in their position because of the rules. Just like how Bobby Lane can weigh his 2-pounder 3 times. That's the rules. 100%. It's across the board. Everybody could weigh him 3 times. Weigh your fish 3 times. If you get 3 weighs and it hits 2 pounds, everybody can do that across the board. I had no issues with the scales. I had no issues with the way that went down on the end. What I had an issue with is, here I am. I want to learn. I want these anglers to be able to highlight their sponsors, to show how good they are, to make decisions, to do all this. and you've got Edwin with a 5-pounder on the line going, oh man, I really didn't want to catch a 5-pounder today. It's your championship event. It's your first morning. Like, how you should be wanting to catch big. I don't care if it's as many 2-pounders, 1-pounders, 12-ounces, 5-pounders, 10-pounders. It was hard to watch those guys because, I mean, like, you had Zach Burge really laying off the gas, going, man, I'm just kind of messing around here. Maybe try to get a couple bites, make sure I'm staying up there. He had Connell and Wheeler and guys that are laying off of their fish, and they knew this was an issue on the BPT, which is why they made the winner for each of the opening rounds, or the knockout round, go straight to the championship, because that prevented guys from laying off. And you still have guys in the middle who are like, oh, I'm too far away from the lead. But you had an incentive there. And I understand you had 41 people and you needed to have even, because then you split it into 2 groups. But the managing of the fish is something that you don't ever see in a 5-fish format. That is not, say, like David said, guys do all the same thing on the Elite Series when you manage your fish, not catching everything you can on your juice. That is not true. I've never seen a guy stop fishing in the Bassmaster Classic at 10 a.m. Never seen it. Never will see it. Now, I've seen guys that pull off of their A stuff, but they're now going big fish hunting. Now they're pulling out the giant spinnerbait with the Colorado blade. They're running up. They're going to pull out the big swim bait, the mag draft. They're going to try to figure out a way to catch a big fish, because the big fish matters, because that would cull. They're trying to figure out different patterns. They're still trying to catch fish. They're literally not trying to catch fish right now, which was kind of my issue with that. It was also a little interesting to see on Grand. There's really no incentive in that format to like do off the wall stuff. Because you're in, but like, it's just an interesting time of the year on Grand for that. You didn't see a lot of the big spinner baits, the running way up the river, the taking the risk to get 5 or 6 bites. You saw a lot of the release fish, local stuff, stay in the primary areas where they always catch them on transition and catch a lot of 2 to 2.5 pound fish. Sean, they were trying to not catch fish because they knew that they were in. There was no incentive for actually winning the round, and then both anglers did not want a day off. They wanted to fish that next day. They didn't want to have to take the day off to go, because there was no going straight to the championship round. So once Michael Neal took the lead, he accidentally took the lead and then realized, oh, I want to fish tomorrow and not have a day off to fish the second elimination round. And that Edwin was like, oh, Michael Neal took the lead. Then you had guys, then those two were both trying to not make it. And then everyone in the middle had no incentive because they were safe. So not complaining about it, just saying that I didn't like that in a championship event. You don't see that in the 5-fish. You do not see that in the 5-fish format. Yes, Chuck, Timmy Horton did do that, and he ordered a pizza. That was the final day of the tournament, and he 100% knew that he had the tournament won. He was all the way in Ticonderoga and had a 60-mile run back, and knew that with his lead, there was no chance that anyone could catch him. So I would have done the same thing in his. Not the same as not fishing. The guy couldn't upgrade. He had the tournament won in the bag. That is one of the beauties of MLF, is on the final day, you will never see anyone lay off because they don't have to be back to the weigh-in. There is no incentive for what it, like, that is the one thing on the final day, it is all no holes barred, does not matter. You cannot get comfortable in any way, shape, or form. The other thing that was really interesting in this tournament was it seems like there were 2 camps in Redcrest. There were 2 camps, and this is of the fan base. There's the forward-facing sonar camp, and there was like the Bobby Lane camp. And it seemed like Bobby Lane all of a sudden was holding the banner for the guys that weren't forward-facing sonar. I mean, you had Edwin and Michael Neal and Connell and pretty much most of the guys there that were throwing forward-facing sonar. I don't think the guys like Casey Ashley and Andy Montgomery and stuff were doing that, but it was definitely 2 camps. And in the end, I think a lot of people were happy just because a guy won it who wasn't strictly 100% relying on the forward-facing sonar, it's very interesting to see how that will evolve. We had a big talk about it in the house between myself, Brad Hallman, Billy Gottabass, and Andrew Upshaw about where is that going, and some of the guys are like, oh, they're going to ban it in the tournaments because they just don't like the guys running and looking. Yeah, other guys go, no, there's absolutely no way as far as the money, and it's another skill and it's an evolution, but it's not like a bait evolution, it's a technology evolution. But how is it different than side imaging, whether you can see on the side or in the front? Not something that I'm going to get into now, but it was just interesting to see the two camps, and good to see, hey, you can still like cast and catch fish without looking at them, but also seeing how effective the forward-facing sonar is. So those are kind of my thoughts on Redcrest. Dude, as a whole, I did say 10. I will give it a 9 out of 10. I thought it was a really great event. I thought they did a really good job. The expo was neat, clean, easy to get into. Had a lot of great stuff there. The 0.5 was for that kind of format deal, where I'll take a point off for that. But the excitement at the end of it, I'd put it up in the history of. It's hard to. I don't know how you want to do the history of it, because you have to see where everything evolves and changes. But right now, I would put it in probably one of the top 5. I wouldn't put it as 1 or 2. I'd put it, in my opinion, as one that last the last hour of Bobby Lane's day, hour and a half of Bobby Lane's day. Top 5 moments right now. Since I've started covering it, we could get Ken Duke on. I saw Mr. Duke at both the Bassmaster Classic and the Redcrest Expo, so we need to get him on. Probably film a show with him this week that'll run next week. That'll get his take on comparing and contrasting those. A couple other things that I wanted to mention before we wrap up Monday's show. I am fishing with Adam Bartuzek, the Crappie Chronicles dude who I'm friends with, who I went up and he taught me how to ice fish up in Minnesota. He said, hey man, there's this big St. Jude's Bass Classic that goes on every year. You are free in the beginning week of May, no opens. Do you want to fish it? So it's the Dick Hiley St. Jude's Bass Classic, first week of May up in Minnesota. And I want to see here. I had it pulled up. It says they've raised like 4 million. Event history. In 1999, a group of anglers from Minnesota and Wisconsin founded the Dick Hiley St. Jude's Bass Classic. First year, it raised $11,000. Over the last 23 years, nearly 400 anglers have participated and raised $5 million to support the life-saving mission of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So that's just from that tournament. And I'm going to fish it with Adam. So we have a BTL shirt that is only going to be available for a week. It's $20. 100% of the proceeds go to St. Jude's. That's kind of how we raise the money. You buy a t-shirt. You can also donate directly. Since I had to drive back, I have not had a chance to update the website, but there will be a link on basszone.com. Big bold link right at the top. It will take you right to, we built a completely separate page with ATS to just for those proceeds for the $20. Every single cent of it goes to St. Jude's that Adam and I am fishing with Adam Bartuzek up there the first week of May. So I'll have a link. It says, Bass Fishing Saves Lives, St. Jude's, BTL, 3 different colors on a short sleeve shirt. So if you've supported the BTL merchandise store in the past, that kind of, I use that money to help me get through the opens on a daily basis, and of course have to give MJ his cut of it too. But this 100% from this shirt will go to St. Jude. Something cool that I've always kind of looked for a way to give back, and then when Adam said it, I said, yeah, this is a cool deal. So we got with that. So look for that to be up today or tomorrow, probably the 4th or the 5th. And then after we have Cooper Galan on tomorrow to talk about how he Demiki rigged a win on Cherokee Lake, we're going to have Adam come on, and one of the tournament directors, leaders, one of the creators of this event will come on up north in Minnesota and talk about what's going on. I'd be interested to see the feedback from you, what you guys thought about Redcrest compared to the Classic, the Bobby Lane win. Also next week, so I have to film I have to film all the live shows this week. And then, so after this month, I should have the live BTL on location stuff good to go, so I could do shows on the road, do less and less recorded. But there will be another week of recorded shows while I'm at the James River next week, which I have to do a lot of logistics on that to get ready to go for that too. But I'm going to try to get Brad in the studio to do another Bassmaster Opens breakdown where we break down each other's film of the event. That went really well last time that we did it in Florida. Also have the video coming out this week from Cherokee Lake. I hate to disappoint you. It's not that exciting. I spent a lot of time on the dam fishing riprap, but they were cool smallmouth. I had all smallmouth in the tournament. And then Uncle Frank will be back on Thursday. I was trying to get back in the swing of things. A 13-hour drive killed me on the way back. But that's all we got for BTL on a Monday. Good to be back live. Good to see everyone in the chat. We'll talk to you tomorrow with Cooper Gallant, 24-year-old Canadian Bassmaster Open winner. This has been BTL on a Monday.